Hey everyone, I know it's been a long time, but Daddy's podcast is starting right now.
Welcome back to the Lessons for Success show. I'm your host, Adam Wardlaw, a middle school science teacher and a high school football coach here in the great state of South Carolina. I just want to thank everybody that's been supporting the show so far. Lessons for Success has now been heard in over 5 countries and over 22 states here in America. Hopefully, you've all gained some valuable insight from our guests so far on the show. Remember that new episodes come out every Sunday, and the show is available everywhere where podcasts can be found. Keep up with the show on our social media accounts at L4S Show or use the hashtag L4S Show. Again, that's the number 4. You can also send in messages to the show by downloading the Anchor app. Feel free to send in any questions or comments related to the show so it can be featured in future episodes of the podcast.
Daddy, who's the guest on your podcast this week?
This week's guest is Evo Hannan. Evo hails from Dubai, Egypt, and has been teaching design and innovation for over 18 years. Evo has been featured on TEDx Talks and is the founder of Teacher Society, a global community that develops educators through professional development, networking, and social engagements. You can follow Evo on Twitter at Evo_Hannan, and you can follow Teacher Society on Twitter at Teacher Society X. Enjoy!
Thanks, Adam. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on this podcast. My name's Evo Hannan. I've been a teacher for 18 years. I grew up and started my teaching career in the UK in the Northwest, just outside of Liverpool. And then 6 years later moved to Dubai, and I've been in Dubai for 12 years. My story generally relates to growing up as a non-white individual with my brothers in a very white British community, which instantly kind of has its own natural struggles, which I don't necessarily need to explain. They're quite obvious. And through those struggles, which I know a lot of people have in their own way, whether it's weight gain or bullying or so on and so forth, using that to empower me to become more as I've grown older. The interesting thing now as a snapshot is over the past 5 years, I've gone from being what I would call a standard faculty leader to someone who's branched out and developed international networks. One example is Teacher Society, which now exists in Dubai, Singapore, and New York, and is soon to launch in Hong Kong. Another example is a think tank of 8 teachers around the world who help me develop innovative ideas, which is part of this program called Innovation X. And all this creativity and development of education has come through the confidence that I've built in my later 30s, really, and being inspired by people like yourself, Adam, who are taking steps outside of their natural professional comfort zone to try new things and to learn more from others and to collaborate more. And I'm in a very interesting place right now, and it's obviously enabled you to find me and for us to connect.
And I really appreciate you taking the time. You mentioned, kind of going from that role as, you called it standard teacher, and I think I got the idea what you're saying there, to you're really branching out and trying to connect not only with people in your region, people all over the world, which is easier to do now than ever. Can you kind of describe what that was like, emotionally? And, I feel like a lot of the times people are afraid of what they don't know, and they shy away from maybe stepping out of their comfort zone. Can you kind of describe what that was like?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a natural risk taker. From a very early age, I was a bit like, this young version of Tony Stark, and I was always fixing things and creating things, and exploded my radio control car because I overpowered it. And so I was very accepting of taking risks from an inventive point of view. And as I got older and older, I just started to realize that kind of skill set of taking risks could be applied to other areas of my life, including my profession. Sometimes the issue with that is if you try to step away from your job description a little bit, people don't always like that, which means you might have to take risks and develop ideas outside of your job description and develop your own passion projects. My initial passion project started with basically like a social event. It was in September 2014. It was in Dubai Marina. I was very scared. I put out this event on Facebook. I expected maybe 30 people to turn up. I had 80 people from 12 schools turn up. I was quite hesitant because I had to stop and introduce myself and explain to people why I was doing what I was doing. Fast forward 2 years, and I had probably about 12 different events under my belt with brunches, lunches, cinema nights, go-karting, football. And I tried a bunch of things, really. And then a few years later, formalized it into a brand called Teacher Society. And then from there, so there were small steps building up my confidence and my experience, and kind of going, okay, well, don't be afraid if that doesn't work. I had events that I put on and no one turned up. And then I have had events that I've put on and 120 people have turned up. And I just realized the world is not going to care as much about my idea as I do. And that's okay. As long as I'm doing something that is creating positive energy and developing communities and helping people, they're not always going to go right, but that's okay. And now, as you've probably figured out, I've got much more confidence to take an idea outside of my current city, not worrying about whether it's successful or not. I don't mind. And launching it in New York with Mer Servanak, who's one of my really good friends, I'm taking it slowly, and that's fine. At the end of the day, it's my idea, and I don't mind if it takes 2 years to succeed or 10 years to succeed. There's no pressure on me to make it a success. I'm happy that I've done it. I'm happy that I've started a movement. I'm happy that it's there and it exists. And I think that needs to be isolated to students and to members of staff. Having taken an idea and developing into something that exists in the real world, whether people care about it or not, doesn't matter. People didn't care about the iMac when Steve Jobs first launched it. People didn't care about PCs and Windows when Bill Gates first launched it. But as long as you care about it, that's the starting point.
I love that answer, that, what you said about as long as it's creating this positive outcome in some way, and as long as it's something that you're passionate about, it's really no longer risk taking. It's really like you have no risk at all, because it's really something that you're passionate about. And so many people don't step out because they're afraid of the failure part, when if it's something you're really passionate about, step out anyway, because what's the worst that's going to happen? I was scribbling down the whole time you were talking there because I just loved it. You talked about all the risk you've taken and these new things that you've been trying, new events and such. when you're kind of reflecting on the ones that succeeded or the ones that had people attend, even though they might have been different events or whatever the case was, do you kind of notice a common theme for what maybe lended those risks to be more of a success, I guess?
The ones that were more successful, I definitely had more energy to promote them, and I had a larger window of marketing. The ones that were less successful generally happened at a time where I was just more tired, and I just couldn't give the project or the event as much time as I wanted to. And as a result, I just slacked. I didn't have the same level of motivation. So when people didn't turn up, I was kind of like, okay, I get that. It's upsetting because you've still gone to the effort to do it. But yeah, you don't always have the same energy levels. You know, you could have the event of the year planned on the 20th of June. But if you get a cold on the 10th of June, then you're out for a week, the week before the event, when really you should be doing all your promo, phoning your friends, sending out emails, chasing up emails. You don't know that's going to happen. But that, again, it's okay, because it's not always going to go your way. And tomorrow's a new day. And the next event's another event, you know. And I think, Adam, one of the biggest things I've learned is foresight. It doesn't matter what my idea is now, because in 5 years' time, if I continue with it, it's going to be a much bigger idea. In 5 years' time, if I continue with it, there's going to be way more people on board. And that is very, very much true. Like, and all of the things I've done have been slow burning, and they've been fine. I haven't put too much pressure on myself to try and expand quickly. At the end of the day, I'm still a full-time teacher. Like, you need to be realistic. I've still got to sleep. I've still got to feed my 2 kids and spend time with them. I've still got a household. Like, don't worry. You know, you're not going to... the ideas you have aren't going to be a success overnight. And don't ever put that type of pressure on yourself. They don't have to be. You know? They don't have to be, and they don't need to be. Just be happy that you're doing something and be proud of it. You know, you're doing something that other people aren't doing. Give yourself a thumbs up. Talk to people who are positive. Those people will support you, and take small steps every single day towards that bigger vision.
You know, I love that, because especially in education, you know, here in the United States, there are so many different programs, so many different policies. You know, so many, you know, teachers get stretched so thin, and then they have to serve their students, and then their own families and all. So, you know, I love it when you said that the more energy we're able to devote to something, those are the more successful things. And it, you know, if you're in a school or an organization, doesn't even have to be schools. It could be your sports team. Whatever you decide you're going to do, you know, I love your theme of, you know, you need to make sure you're passionate about it, because you got to be able to give it that energy if you really want it to succeed. And then, you know, that idea of foresight, you know, is that kind of something that, was there a certain aha moment where you kind of realized that, hey, you know, it doesn't matter that things are going slow right now, or that it's not an instant payoff? You know, is there kind of a specific moment where you realize that, or is it just kind of something reflecting back that you've developed that idea?
It slowly developed over my early 30s. I wish I'd have learned it in my early 20s, to be honest. But maybe my level of maturity and my life experience wouldn't have led me that way. And then when you look at the top CEOs across the world, most of them don't start their big ideas until their late 30s, which makes sense. And I learned foresight, which I would personally think is probably one of the top, if not the top skill to have as a person. Simply because it doesn't matter if you don't have the money. It doesn't matter if you don't have the talent. If you have the foresight to say, I have an idea and I want it to be over there in 5 years' time, or I want it to be over there at some point in the future, and I am happy to walk that journey, you have a better rate of success than someone who has talent but doesn't have vision, or has talent but isn't willing to work hard for it, or has talent or money but isn't willing to put the time in. The foresight of Elon Musk with SpaceX and PayPal, Henry Ford when he built cars, and he knew there would be roads when everyone else was riding horses, and no one understood why he was building cars when a horse did the job. The foresight of Jeff Bezos, who's now the richest man in the world, who knew the convenience of people buying online when other people limited themselves, and the same goes for Jack Ma as well. These people all saw things over there when everyone else was looking here. And none of them, at the time when they did it, were necessarily multimillionaires. They just had foresight. They were like, I want this to be there, and I'm willing to work for it. And I'm not going to tell too many people about it either, so they don't take my idea. So that kind of, for the same thing that I've explained to students, actually, if you want to go to MIT, you need to have that foresight when you're 12 or 13. When you're 16, it's too late. Because all the kids who had the foresight when they were 12 and 13 and went to the summer schools in MIT, when they were 13, 14, and then got to know people in MIT, and then got to know the application process, and then got to know the expectations, at 16, they are 3 years ahead of you when you started to think about it at 16. Too late.
Yeah. Now, do you feel, with your students, is this, when you're talking to them about these things, do you feel it's better? Are there any sort of exercises or practices, or is it more just kind of a reflective time that, or maybe it's just open dialogue with them? What's the best way to try to communicate that with others? I feel like people out there listening that are wanting to take that on themselves might be able to benefit with maybe some practices or some ideas to be thinking about, or some things to ask themselves when they're trying to process a new idea.
The best opportunity to speak about foresight, especially with students, is either at the beginning of the year when they're setting targets, or at the end of the year when they're reflecting on the previous year. I would very much have them on that journey as soon as possible. If you want to live in the Bahamas in a big flashy house when you're 25 years old or 30 years old, where do you want to be when you're 25? Where do you want to be when you're 20? Where do you want to be when you're 18? Where do you want to be when you're 16? Where do you want to be when you're 13? Because right now you're 12. And you're going to be 30 in a flash, and you won't even realize it. And before you know it, your mate's living in the big house and you're working for his company. He had the foresight. Maybe you didn't.
Yeah, I love it, Evo. Again, I appreciate your time tonight. For the people out there listening, it is well past 1 a.m., right? And they all appreciate you taking the time as well. One thing I like to kind of cap off the interviews with, and it could be something that we've already discussed, and feel free to kind of just summarize it real quick and hit the nail on the head, or if it's something maybe we hadn't discussed yet, we can dive into that a little bit. But if you just had to say what would be your key to success or keys to success, what would those be?
It would basically be the two terms I've spoken about. Not being afraid to take risks and having foresight on your ideas, which you would take risks with. And then surrounding that with patience. And just not worrying. Don't don't expect quick results. No one was successful. Not a single successful innovator, inventor, entrepreneur has had quick success and has continued to be successful. It doesn't exist. People work hard for where they are, and as a result, when they look back on that journey, they look back with a smile. So good luck to teachers, to students, to anyone out there who has big dreams and big visions and big goals. You have the same starting point as every single other person. Go out, focus on it, good luck, and I hope you make it.
Evo, I appreciate your time tonight. If there's any platform that people who are listening wanted to be able to keep up with you or possibly even try to reach out to you, social media wise or whatever you feel comfortable sharing, what would be the best way to kind of keep up with the things that you're doing and the programs that you're getting going?
The easiest is just my Twitter, which is at Evo, EVO_Hannan, HANNAN. And my Twitter channel very much speaks the same language as what I've been speaking to you about. So, feel free to jump on board and engage with me. I love collaborating with people. I love learning from people. And I hope to connect with you guys soon.
Daddy, I'm learning so much from this podcast.
I enjoyed my conversation with Evo Hannan, and I feel there are countless lessons that can be drawn from his message. Let's review this lesson for success. Evo shared that innovation is often associated with risk-taking. Many people do not pursue innovation because of the fear of adversity or failure. Evo shared that when your idea is something that you're truly passionate about, then it shouldn't matter whether or not you fail because you are pursuing your idea. Evo has found that the common theme for successful innovation is directly related to the amount of positive energy that is invested in the idea. Evo has shared that foresight is the most important asset anyone can have. The ability to make projections about the development of your ideas, when coupled with hard work, is extremely valuable because it allows you to see the bigger picture and pursue that goal. You need to understand that no one will care as much about your new idea as you do, and therefore you shouldn't fear failure because you're really the only person who's going to be directly affected. Well, that's it for this week's Lesson for Success. Be sure to interact with the show on Twitter and Instagram at L4S Show, mentioning us or using the hashtag L4S Show. Again, that's the number 4. Episodes will also be placed on the YouTube channel Lessons for Success Show. Download the Anchor app in order to send in messages to the show, and your questions and comments could be featured on future episodes. All of the episodes are available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or anywhere else that podcasts can be found. So be sure to like, subscribe, and rate. Thank you again for listening to the Lessons for Success Show podcast.
That's the end of our show. Thank you for listening.